Hi students, welcome to the video lectures of software engineering. So today we are going to talk about prescriptive models. So what are prescriptive models? And under prescriptive models, we have a couple of process models to discuss. There's a waterfall model, V model, incremental model. We'll also talk about one or two models of examples. So what is prescriptive model? Okay. So prescriptive models are nothing but they have some structured approach. They have some structured step-by-step process. Okay, we can write it as structured linear approach. They have structured and linear approach for software development. So here each phase has some clear objectives and deliverables, and they are prescriptive because there are some pre-written rules that exist, and it tells the team exactly what to do at each and every step. So in this process, the process is defined in advance, and it just proceeds through a series of well organized phases. The phases are already we discussed, like requirement gathering, design, coding, testing, and deployment kind of thing. Okay, so this is defined phases with clear deliverables. Okay, so in this we have examples, that is waterfall model, V model, and incremental. Now we'll try to discuss about waterfall model. What is waterfall model? So as it is mentioned, it's a sequential phases of development. Each phase must be completed before moving to the next, suitable for well-defined, non-changing projects. Right. So when I say waterfall model, so this is one of the most traditional and widely known prescriptive model. Okay. So waterfall model is the traditional and widely known prescriptive model. So basically, this is a classic example for a prescriptive model. This is considered as a classic approach for software development. So what happens? So in this model, so if you observe the diagram, okay, this is the diagram. Waterfall model is represented like this. So the name waterfall will give you a picture that, so it is kind of flowing downwards. Okay, it's kind of flowing downwards, which means, so there are a couple of phases in waterfall model as mentioned here, like requirements, design, implementation, testing, deployment, and maintenance. So what are these phases? So each one will depend on the successful completion of the previous phase. Okay, so let us say, for example, as the diagram is represented in the next slide like this. So you can see this is just like a waterfall model. Okay, so now so let us say this is requirement phase and this is design phase. So design phase will be happening only once the requirement phase is completed. Then it will enter into design phase. Then only when design phase is completed, you can enter into this implementation phase, which means each phase should be completed successfully to reach to the next. So that is the reason why it is called as a waterfall model, and you do not revisit it unless there is a major change or issue in the requirement. Okay, so phases. Now let us talk about these phases. What are these phases? First of all is requirement. So requirement is nothing but gathering the requirements from the stakeholders, and everything should be documented. Since requirements are the important aspect in our software engineering, so based on that, we start our project. So for example, let us say you are trying to design a banking application. So the requirements may include the features like user login, account creation, transaction history, etc. And second phase is design phase. So in design phase, the system's architecture is planned actually. Uh, The system architecture is planned. Here, what happens? Gathering requirement will happen. Okay, gathering requirement from stakeholders will happen. In design phase, the system's architecture is planned. So architecture in the sense both high level and low level. Okay, and for example, let us say in the previous example of requirement gathering, we talked about a banking application, right? So now let us consider the same as well. So in our application, now banking application, the design would include the layout of some user interfaces, or some how can we handle the backend, or how can we handle the account related data, and all these things falls under this design. So next phase is implementation phase. So this is where actual coding happens. Okay, so this is the phase where actual coding happens. Okay, and developers they start building the applications of the system, so based upon the design what they get in the previous stage. So next one is testing. Okay, what is testing? So once it's implemented, so the system is so once the coding and everything happens, so we need to test the system, right? So to identify the defects, we now test the system. And the obvious goal of this particular phase called testing is to ensure that the system is working as per the requirements what we got from the customer. So how do you do this? So let us say, for example, I mean, how to understand this testing is for the same banking applications which we took as an example. So we run a couple of tests, right, to ensure that the user is able to log in successfully and check their account balances, which means the database is being fetched correctly and the login has no issues for any kind of user and all these things. So next is deployment. We see what is deployment? It's nothing but to deliver the software. So once your system is tested in this particular testing phase, okay, now it's time to deploy for the end users. So this phase, can sometimes, this phase can also include like the training the users and deploying the updates also. So now we have been talking about a banking application, and that banking application is released via some app stores. Okay, so you have developed some application. Let us say if that is some banking application, and you just release it in the Play Store. So if it is an Android application, you can just have in the Play Store or the Google Play Store. Then the next phase is maintenance phase. What is maintenance? So once the deployment is finished, now the system will enter the maintenance phase. So when uh, throughout the period, whenever there are any kind of defects or some kind of enhancements are there, so those all will be addressed in this maintenance phase. So for example, we were talking about some banking application throughout all the phases, right? So once the banking application is deployed, then under maintenance, let us say now the application is live, right? The application is live for the users. And suppose the user have found some bugs or some errors or anything, so they just report them. So under this maintenance, what we have to do, we need to figure out all those things. Clear? So this is about waterfall model. So what are the advantages of waterfall model? This is very simple and easy to use, and also we can manage it uh, easily because of its rigid structure, we can say. So then what are the disadvantages? So disadvantages can be, it's very difficult to accommodate any kind of change since this is moving downwards, or we say waterfall model, and already we discussed that you can go to the next phase when your previous phase is completed successfully, right? So in such a scenario, changes in the previous phase are tough. Clear? So that is about waterfall model. So this is waterfall. Next, we talk about incremental model. So what are incremental model? So now, till now, we have seen about waterfall model. Now we talk about some incremental. So incremental models are nothing but, it is having a unique feature, that is the software is developed in small manageable parts, or we say increments, which means a small piece of software. Okay. When I say this increment or the smaller manageable part, just try to understand that it's a, it's a small small piece of software that provides part of the system functionality. Clear? So whenever I say small or manageable piece or an increment, okay, so you just try to understand that this increment represents a kind of, a small piece or the software that provides parts of the system's functionality. And so what is the reason for incremental model to be unique with such small manageable parts or increments is, so we have been seeing that the software projects or the requirements basically are evolving and dynamic in nature. So dynamic in nature in the sense, those things evolve, and which cannot be, well defined at the beginning itself. So such cases we term to be as the evolving or dynamic in nature. So for those things, this particular incremental model is the best suitable one. So it's kind of flexible approach, we can say. Okay. So then what are the key features that makes this incremental model unique? Our first one would be this benefit, early feedback. So what is early feedback? So already I told you, this is developed in small manageable parts or increments, right? So now, since the software is developed incrementally, so the stakeholders who gave you all the requirements will get to see the early versions of the software. So what does this makes is they can give you some early feedback. Early feedback in the sense they can see the increment or a small piece or a manageable part or whatever the part that you have developed under software project. They'll just check it and they'll give you some feedback. Based on that feedback, you can just make the changes in your project, which helps in aligning with the users. So the next, flexible to changes. What are flexible to changes? So unlike waterfall model where you cannot go back once you're done with a phase, the incremental model will allow you to change the to integrate into future increments. So suppose if new features or requirements have come up from the stakeholders or the users, since you are always asking, since you're giving them the increment wise software development, so they might come up with some changes in the requirement. So then those can be added in subsequent increments throughout the project. So that is what flexible to change. And not only that, you also have some faster delivery that is assured in this particular incremental process model, because you are delivering the parts of software as you develop. Then it also reduces the risk, because since you are releasing very small increments, you reduce the risk of failure also, right? So because problems or errors can be identified and resolved early in the process, since you are asking the early feedback from the stakeholders or the customer by releasing some small increments, probably there is much or higher chance that you are reducing the risk. Clear. And rapid application development, RAD, is one such example which we can talk about under this incremental model. So where RAD also focuses on delivering the prototypes quickly and just refining them based on the user feedback. So because this kind of feedback is very much important to make the projects adapt to whatever the changes that are being asked by the customer, since the requirements or the what user or customer wants are evolving in nature. So probably this kind of model best suits for them. So this is what incremental process model. Hope you understood, students. Thank you.